All right, hello everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? All good? Great. So I'll give you guys a quick disclaimer. I haven't done too many talks like this as of recently, especially on the Zoom platform. Uh, I'm from New York and I got three kids running around all the time. So if I'm talking too fast, just tell me slow down. Um, but my name's Erik Milk. I'm so very excited to be here today. Um, as she said, I'm the great nephew of Harvey Milk. I never got to meet Harvey Milk because he was shot and killed before I was born, but I've got to do so many cool things because of Harvey, and be part of so many great things moving forward, in my life. And one of the reasons I'm kind of getting more involved in, what he did and things like that is because he gave me this opportunity. He gave me this kind of, you know, legacy to kind of carry on. And I feel like, especially now being a father of three young girls, that I want them to be proud of their dad also, and set a good tone and kind of move from there. So that's kind of why I'm here, why I'm getting more involved. And how I got involved was actually through my company that I work for, which is Bristol Myers Squibb. They have these PBRG groups, which are professional based work groups, and they're really great for anybody in the work environment that's trying to be more involved and get people more involved. Um, so I would definitely suggest checking them out, or checking out companies that are great at recruiting. All walk, everyone from LGBTQ to all different races, all across every kind of spectrum. So I'll definitely check them out if anybody's looking for jobs, things like that. It's a great company to work for. But besides that, I got involved with them, and Catch a Fire Foundation is a foundation that basically um, pairs people with volunteer groups and people that need, kind of any kind of help in anything. So basically, make a long story short, led me to GLYS, and I'm happy to be here and talk about Harvey and talk about some things, and hopefully answer any questions. If anyone has any questions at any time, please feel free to shout it out or raise your hand, do whatever it is, and we'll answer them. I might not know the answer, but I'll try and answer some of them as best as possible, and we'll go from there. So basically, to get started, Harvey Milk. I'm sure everyone has probably heard the name. Tomorrow is his actual birthday, so that's why we felt fitting. It would kind of be great to get on here and start talking a little bit more about him on the day before. Um, so Harvey was born May 22nd in Woodmere, Long Island, which actually I'm from Long Island as well. So Harvey was the brother of my grandpa, Robert. It was the two boys. Robert then had two children, Stuart and my father, Andrew. Stuart now runs the Harvey Milk Foundation, and he's also part of the LGBTQ community. He does a ton of work with the Harvey Milk Foundation. It's, I mean, really astonishing sometimes what he's doing, not only on a national level but on an international level. And he's might not be as known as Harvey, but he's doing a lot of great stuff to kind of keep the legacy alive. So if you guys ever have time, definitely check out the milkfoundation.org. Really cool stuff going on, and I get more into that later on. But so Harvey was born in Woodmere. He was a very active, very popular, super, one of the popular kind of people growing up in high school. He was the captain of the football team. He was a great athlete, and moving forward, he joined the Navy. He was in the Navy for a little while. He was he was a diver and a lieutenant. He went to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island, which was kind of it's close by us on the East Coast, and it's definitely cool to see that somebody in the service was putting his time in like that. He was actually asked to resign from the Navy, and was questioned on his sexuality, which is pretty crazy because it's come a long way, but there's still a lot of doors to kind of be knocked down when it comes to that stuff. But he was asked to resign at a lieutenant ranking, which is really high up there, and you know, really served our country, which is something I'm really proud of him about. You know, being forced to resign from something that you love is really terrible. I couldn't imagine that happening to me. And, you know, I know it happened to a lot of people and still does. And so I'm kind of glad that it's changing, and partially because of what Harvey did. But, you know, that was just something that hit home. So Harvey, after that, he did a lot of things. He went to the University of Albany. He became a teacher. He traded stocks for a little while. He was really kind of trying to find, you know, his authentic self, like who he was. And, you know, it really wasn't until like 1970s when he moved out to San Francisco, to the Castro area, until he was able to kind of find his true self. You know, growing up, him and my grandpa, they had a relationship, but I don't think that he even had his authentic self to come out to my grandpa as his brother at the time for a while. Their relationship was good and it was strong, and they communicated a lot, but they didn't really have that. You know, he didn't feel comfortable in his, you know, being his authentic self, even with his own family during that time. So it's really, you know, speaks to strides, you know, speaks to all different levels moving forward. So after he moved out to California, he was able to kind of find people that he felt comfortable with, and he found a little bit of voice. He opened up a camera shop. Wait, hold on, I just lost you guys. Give me 1 second.
Can you see us?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. He was able to, you know, meet like-minded people, and he was always somebody who was very passionate about, you know, other people's, you know, feelings and rights, and he was very, you know, amiable in that you know, situation. But he moved out to Castro area. He started a camera shop, and there was some discrimination going on out there, and it was a tough, you know, tough place to be. But they had a community of people, and some people were trying to like discriminate on their businesses, so he decided to form this like coalition, basically, of business owners in the area, which was like his kind of first step into politics. You know, where he had this voice, he had a lot of charisma, and people were telling him like, we should form a group. Okay, they formed this group, and it kind of really set the tone to where his career took off for politics. And it wasn't an easy career either. You know, you could read all through his biographies and things like that, but he had a tough time moving forward, getting elected. He was starting to really come into his own skin and be openly gay, which was huge. You know, he spoke to my grandpa. He let him know prior to any of this stuff, and you know, they're still brothers. That's what it was. It was no different. But he kind of came into his own like family in California, as my grandpa was on the East Coast, and formed all these new people, close people around him. And they basically formed this coalition of business owners, and they were powerful. I mean, you guys know it. If you find one group that, you know, let's say one group buys Coca-Cola, and, you know, you want to discriminate against them, and they stop buying Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola is going to come out and say, well, what's going on? What's happening here? And, you know, that's kind of what they did. They formed this coalition, and they were able to kind of get a little bit of steam underneath them. Moving forward, he became a little bit more interested in politics, and, you know, he had this great voice. He had a ton of charisma, and politicians started to kind of realize and listen and think that, you know, we could get on board with this. This is something that we back. And he got the ear of the mayor, George Moscone at the time, and some other people, and he started to put his bid in the hat to run for city supervisor. Now he lost actually twice, because there was a lot of voting rules that didn't even include, like, so that in one district, it wasn't just that district that was voting, it was an entire, you know, city. And there was a lot of political pressure from, you know, conservative groups that said that, you know, homosexual people were bad, things like that, and it wasn't the true voice of all the people. So he basically fought to kind of get these voting rules changed and moved, and he was successful in that. And on his third campaign in 1977, he successfully won the San Francisco City Supervisor role for the district. Now, this was a huge win for everyone because it was the first openly gay politician that came out and said, I'm here. We're here now, and it was a huge voice for people. It was a great win for everyone, not only LGBTQ people, but for anybody who was backing those people. So it was a really big win. Now, one thing that he knew was that he wasn't just out there fighting for just LGBT rights. He was out there fighting for everyone, because one of his things that he would say to people all the time is that you got to be your authentic self, because if people don't know that Mr. Milk, he was my fifth grade teacher, he's great, but they didn't know that he was gay. They just think, okay, whatever, another person. But when they found out, oh my God, he was a great teacher and he's gay, okay, great, that's even better. And it's really important. And if I could get one message across to anyone, is to be your authentic self, because not only do you do your best work, and everybody around you benefits from that, but you're comfortable. I couldn't imagine if somebody had told me, we don't want to hear that you're a parent. Oh, you're a parent, that's a bad, or anything that you love, anything that you're trying to do. So if I could get any kind of message across to anybody, is always be your authentic self. And that's something that Harvey did. So he fought for not only the the gay discrimination stuff, but he also fought for there was a working group of women that was looking for help for childcare. He was on the bill for that, and he got that accomplished. He fought for there was some military housing at the time that was run down and not being used, and he fought to get that turned into affordable housing for the area. And he was really trying to kind of clean up that entire district and fight for the people that live there, everyone. One of the big things he was kind of famous for was putting on a state bill was to clean up after your dog, which is kind of funny because there's some quotes, and I can't quote it exactly how he said it, but basically politics is a lot of dog poop, so it's kind of funny because there's a lot of that going on still. And I'm sure everyone sees that, but he had a lot of charisma. That's one thing I could say. And he had some really great quotes and great things to say. But probably one of the biggest things was the Proposition 6 in California, which was on the state ballot. And that was to fire any gay teachers. So if you were gay and you were a teacher, you were fired. And it was actually, this was passing in other states throughout the country at this time. He got a lot of people on the campaign of his, on his side, to really kind of speak out and say, we don't care if our teachers are gay. Our teachers, they're great teachers. They're here. We don't care about that. And that was a huge win for California and for the country, because at that time, like I said, it was being passed in numerous states. And there was a senator, it was Joe Briggs at the time, who was basically kind of running on this whole platform of discrimination, and there's no place, in this country for any kind of hate and discrimination, and that's the way I feel about it. But so Proposition 6 was shot down, which was a huge win. And he kind of got the ball moving, and Harvey was really starting to kind of make some national headlines, really starting to speak out on national issues. And unfortunately, in 1978, it was November 27th, I'm getting the date correct, one of the other city supervisors, a guy named Dan White, he snuck into City Hall through a window with a gun to get past the metal detectors. He went to the mayor of San Francisco's office at the time, George Moscone, and he shot him at point blank range. And then he walked into Harvey's office and shot Harvey, and killed them both at point blank range. At the time, Dan White was a supervisor on the same board with Harvey, and he was on the conservative level, and was really kind of at ends with Harvey over his issues, and they were disagreeing a lot. And he killed both of these people. George Moscone was, in Harvey's corner more, and they were kind of forming this relationship, and they were trying to turn San Francisco, into a great place like it was. And Dan White really didn't agree with that, so he killed them both. Now, in like legal textbooks, and I'm not like a law person. I saw that there was somebody from School of Law here, from UB, but they called Dan White, basically went to trial, and they called it like the Twinkie Defense. They basically said that Dan White was an avid health food eater and workout guy, and he had a bout of depression, and he started to eat a lot of junk food. And one of the things was Twinkies, so they called it the Twinkie Defense. Now, I don't really know the panel or the jury, but he killed two people in broad daylight, and he basically got no more than 8 years in prison. I don't even think he did the 8 years in prison. But on May 21st, actually, which is today, in 1979, which is not great at math, but 42 years ago on this day, the verdict came out that, he was only going to get no more than 8 years in prison. I don't even think he served that long, which sparked, a ton of riots. They call it the White Night riots. And there was thousands upon thousands of people that took to City Hall in San Francisco at the time. And there was some violence, and there was a lot of damage done to the city because people were kind of outraged at what's going on. Now, you fast forward that to nowadays, and especially over the past couple of years, and people say, can you believe what's going on? This was going on, and this is America. And when people feel like they're being oppressed, and when people feel like they're being treated unfairly, it's your right to speak out, and it's your right to do what's right. So, I see a lot of stuff that happened then going on now with different groups, and, and I understand it. I get what's going on. Now, it doesn't mean to be violent or do things like that, but, it's really great that we have a voice, and you should speak your mind whenever you can. That's another definite thing I would like to hammer home. But, if you see something wrong and you feel something's wrong, you should say something, and you should do something. Which also kind of brings me to, why I got involved a little bit in allyship. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm working on with my company, with my friends, with people I know, because there's a lot of people out there that are in support of LGBTQ rights, and a lot of people don't exactly know what to do, and if I could stress anything to people is talk to people, communicate with people. If it's something that, you feel passionate about, have a conversation with people, talk to people, get somebody that, supports you to wear, a rainbow pin during Pride Month. You don't have to be gay to wear a rainbow pin for a little bit. You could be in support of somebody. And, a lot of my friends, even, they don't, they're straight. They don't really understand even what allyship is. And truly, I didn't really understand until I spoke to more people in the LGBTQ community, and, ask questions. It's okay to say the word gay. It's okay to say the word lesbian. Like, it's okay, as long as you're, true and passionate about what you're talking about. This is what we need. This is what we need, more people to, be in support and realize what we're, what's trying to be accomplished. So definitely do that. Talk to people, if they have questions. Some people right now have questions regarding, pronouns and things like that. Have that conversation. It might be a little bit awkward at first, but it's really not, once you get going, and then, you got another quote unquote ally on your side. And it's a really important thing, that something that I'm working on, at least in my organization, to kind of get accomplished. Because a lot of people, like I said, they're in support. They just don't know how to support, I guess, if that makes any sense. So yeah, back to Harvey. They had the White Knight riots, and Dan White, I don't know exactly how long he actually did in prison, but when he came out, I believe it was a couple months later, but he took his own life. So, I still boggles my mind that how, only 8 years, or, the sentence of only 8 years was passed down, but things change, I guess. Things happen for a reason, and then hopefully it changes for the better. One thing Harvey was getting a lot, as he was kind of rising to a voice and a power in California, in the nation, really, was he was getting death threats. He was getting, every day, thousands of them, and that's something that he did speak to my grandpa a lot about. They would have conversations, and my grandpa would tell him, because my grandpa didn't know at this time, he would tell him, "Stop talking. What are you doing? Get out. Somebody's." And he said, "I can't." He goes, "I'm at a point where I can't." And that's very commendable and courageous of him, because he even predicted his own assassination. Basically, there's tapes of him talking about him being killed and these death threats. And one of his biggest quotes, I guess you could say, one of the biggest things was, it was on a tape, I believe it was called "To Be Recorded in the Event of My Assassination." And he basically said, "If a bullet should enter my brain, let that bullet destroy every closet door in the world, and let that open up for everyone." And I think that's probably one of the biggest messages that I ever got from Harvey, about being, your authentic self. And the closet door, even about being, an ally at that point. For me, like, for a while, I was always in support. I grew up in a household where, love was taught by for every walk, creed of life. My doors weren't locked. There was different people sleeping on my couch. We were always safe and everything, but everybody was welcome in my home. And I didn't realize that I wasn't really part of the problem, but I wasn't helping by remaining silent, and not saying that I'm in support, or, I believe in this. And, and that was kind of my closet door, I guess, and I didn't really have any, holding back moment from coming out and saying I'm an ally, but it was just more of like, I didn't realize it until I kind of spoke to more and more people. I realized that's something I need to, volunteer and say. So, yeah, that's a little bit about Harvey. There's a ton of stuff more you could read about him. I'm sure you guys probably know a ton. There's a Milk movie, which, is a little bit more of a Hollywood done up kind of version of Harvey Milk's life. But I would encourage everybody to check out The Life and Times of Harvey Milk, because it's a documentary. It actually won an Academy Award. It was done back in the late 80s, I want to say. It's a really kind of in-depth look at Harvey and his life and what he did, and what he stood for. There's also a play, or screenplay written by Patricia Lowry called Dear Harvey. It's a great production of what Harvey did and stood for, and it's every year on his birthday is read by people across the United States, and it's recorded. People put it on YouTube now. Social media is another great outlet sometimes, where you could kind of let your voice be heard. So definitely don't be shy to let your voice be heard. Don't be shy to talk to people. Communicate, and most of all, be your authentic self. As much as you can at all times. I guess I'll open it up for questions. I'd like it to make it a little bit more interactive. So please, feel free to ask away. Whatever you guys would like me to do, let's talk about it.
So I was 15 years old in 1977 and listening to the evening news. And of course, knowing about myself at that time, but not really being out to family and parents. So, you, I listened to those stories with a mixture of kind of thrill and apprehension, because we were seeing on television, really for the first time for me, an individual that somehow normalized a gay man. And it made a lot of us realize that we didn't have to be any of the extremes that they showed at that time. And those, of course, were, very cultural expressions of either ultra feminine men or ultra masculine men. And here was this guy that was somewhere in the middle, that wore regular clothes and was talking about dog poop. So, there was this amazing way in which that almost silly issue opened the door to people to see a person in a different light. So, I never realized how important dog poop could be. And then in 1984, when the Times of Harvey Milk came out, and then I was 22 and I was watching a movie about my own community, and my jaw was on the floor the entire time, that all of this stuff was going on in California. So it sounds like I'm making a speech instead of asking a question, but my question is about, legacy, and you coming to talk to us, and you had not actually met your uncle, but obviously that's part of the legacy of your family. And I kind of wanted to ask you about how, what sense of responsibility that has brought to you. I mean, obviously some, because you're here talking to us now and kind of maybe fulfilling that responsibility, but how does that happen, and how did that make you feel?
Yeah, I didn't. I guess the first time I realized the importance of it was in sixth grade. I had a history teacher, Mr. Maynard, who he was gay, because later I still had conversations with him, and he was one of the greatest teachers I ever had. But he got me as a student, and he said, I knew Harvey was my uncle. He says, Erik Milk, first day of class, and he goes, oh, any relation to Harvey Milk? I said, yeah, he's my great uncle. And he went, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. I heard about him. I watched the movie. My parents showed me Life and Times of Harvey Milk when I was like, fifth grade. And I was like, yeah, I didn't really, and also this was probably 1996, 1995 even. So it wasn't as huge, of an issue on political spectrums and everything, but he was genuinely like almost, moved. He was completely moved. And he said, that's amazing. I'd like to talk to you more about it, things like that. And I realized kind of there that, wow, I guess he was that important. It didn't even hit me when I was watching the movie. So from there, moving forward, even till today, I meet some people, and a lot of times it's people that were around in the 70s, or sometimes younger people who learn the story of Harvey. But I mean, how truly moved they are by him, and what happened, that I feel the sense of responsibility at that point to continue the legacy. And by legacy, not even tell you about what he did, but have an actionable, do something about it, and do something. What can I do about it also? Because I could talk about him for days. He did that, he did so many things, but what can I do too to continue it? And that's the responsibility, that I have right now. Like I said, I have 3 young children, and my goal every day is to make sure that their life is going to be great, and it needs to be great by accomplishing what Harvey was looking for also. So I think that's probably my sense of responsibility. to your question, it just brings me to some other things. Earlier on, when I was in college time, when the movie came out, things like that, I got to have some really great experiences. And, looking back on it now, I should have had even more responsibility then, that I'm trying to take on now. But I got to go to the White House, and I got to meet President Obama, and, to see the movement again that they had from Harvey was truly unbelievable. So I think that the responsibility is kicking in even more now, as I'm getting older and getting a little bit more wiser.
Well, thank you. I mean, that really answers some of my questions that I have about any family that has members that do, things that become well known and nationally famous, and kind of like how those families then carry that legacy on.
Sure. Yeah.
So thank you. And I apologize for my dog that was upstaging you. So I have to turn my video off frequently. I was going to say she had a dog. She had a question about the dog poop, but.
So I think we had a few other questions in the chat, and then I had some just general roundtable questions and some from our youth who weren't able to make it. So I know that Eric, you've talked a little bit about the current work that you're doing on supporting the LGBTQ+ community. And it's something that LGBTQ+ rights is obviously very important to you and your family. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your current work or the current work of the Harvey Milk Foundation.
Yeah, sure. So on a smaller level, for me, I've been trying to volunteer at local school districts on Long Island, and it's a little bit tough because of the pandemic with the video conferencing. But even prior to the video conferencing, I had a couple, events at 3 different local school districts, just talking to kids around, Harvey Milk's birthday time, around this time, just kind of letting them know who he was. I would bring in some of the things like, the stamp that they made of Harvey, just introducing things like that to them. And then, they would have a curriculum, which is great. I mean, that's another thing. Harvey Milk's being taught now in history class, and it's really, I wish it was taught to me in my history class at 7th grade level or 6th grade level, because and to all my peers. I mean, I think it really would make a huge difference and make a change in a positive change in the world. But I'm definitely more on the micro level as far as the things that I'm doing. I've worked with the Harvey Milk Foundation a couple times to speak at a couple events. One of the things I did more recently was about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. The Atlanta Gay Men's Chorus did a entire chorus about Harvey, and a lot of it was original composing things. And I got to go down there and talk to them, speak to them after, and that was really one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen. I mean, I've got to meet President Obama, I got to meet some celebrities and things like that, but seeing 60 people sing in front of people and sing about Harvey, and the positivity and the energy in the room was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And that really kind of gave me a little bit more motivation to keep the ball moving. After I had 3 kids in 3 years, so I have twins and a 3-year-old. So the life got a little bit busy, but now that they're kind of getting older and they're not trying to eat everything in sight, I'm definitely going to look to continue more work, especially now that life is starting to look like it's getting slightly back to normal as far as COVID protocols and things like that. As far as the Harvey Milk Foundation, which I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. There's also, if anybody is interested in partnering or doing any kind of volunteer stuff, there's always kind of opportunities out there. But the Harvey Milk Foundation and things that my Uncle Stuart does, it's really unbelievable. Right now, I believe in the next upcoming weeks, there's going to be a U.S. Navy ship named after Harvey Milk. They're just kind of waiting on the ceremony details, things like that. But I mean, to have somebody who was forced to resign from, the Navy, an organization, a military branch, to being, having a ship named after you, it just speaks, leaps and bounds basically about, where we're kind of going and what's happening. Stuart also, like, one of the things that he's extremely passionate about is, in America, we still have a lot to change and a lot to move when it comes to, equality. But internationally, I mean, you could still be killed for being gay. You could still be killed for being in support. People, have to leave their homes because of it. And that's something that he's fighting for. And I mean, really on a daily basis, kind of putting his neck out there like Harvey did. Going to countries, and he gets death threats also and things like that, and he doesn't even pay any mind. It's really commendable what he's doing. You could read a lot more about all the everything that's going on, but he's on an international level, really kind of trying to change the platform for on a global level, which is, I mean, my brain can't even wrap my head around it sometimes, like all the the chips that have to kind of go into play when it comes to trying to make a change globally. But for me, I'm just really trying to change what I can change around me, and hopefully that kind of snowballs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then I see we have a hand from one of our youth. If you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so I have a few. Like a couple years ago, I did a school project on your uncle.
Cool.
I wanted to ask if you have any photos of him around, because there aren't actually a lot. There's just a couple, and one of them is him at I think it was the first Pride Parade in San Francisco, which is like really cool, but I was wondering if you had any more.
Yeah, definitely do have more. Actually, so right now I'm in Maine right now for my brother-in-law's wedding, and I'm not even in my house. I mean, it's a beautiful house, way nicer than my house, but we rented on like an Airbnb, which is cool. But I do have a ton of like links that there's a famous photo of Harvey with his tie blowing in the wind. And I forgot the name of the photographer off the top of my head, but I have everything on my my desktop at home. If you want, if anybody has any questions, I could give you guys my email. It's Erik Milk, ERIKMILK @gmail.com. You could email me, and when I get back, I'd be happy to send you all the stuff that I have. We also have some family things of Harvey in my house that was given to my father, and from my grandpa who passed away. My grandma's still alive. She's down in Florida. Just saw her a couple weeks ago. She finally got vaccinated, and she finally got to meet my children. So she even has some like handwritten notes that from Harvey that were written to my grandpa. Some really cool stuff, which a lot of it is kind of being donated to places mostly in California. There's like some schools too. There was a Harvey Milk School in New York City, some things like that. But they'll be put on for display there for sure.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, feel free to if anybody ever has any questions or anything, to email me. I'll give you my cell phone maybe via email, but I don't know if this is being recorded, if I should give my cell phone right now. But you guys can feel I'm pretty open. You could contact me whenever you guys would like.
Yeah, and GLYS is happy to facilitate as well. If
Sure.
you want to send us, if you want to contact any of us, we're happy to get you Erik's contact info and put you in touch. And we just want to thank you so much for being such an open book and being so willing to talk with folks and share your personal story and your family's history. It's amazing. And when Erik says that he is an open book and that he's happy to answer any questions, I can verify that that's true. And we've had an opportunity to have some great open conversation. And just thank you so much for being such a great ally to our community as well. Does anybody else, it's like we've got about 15 minutes. I think we're available if anybody has any questions. We'll stay on for a little bit after 6, after we stop the recording. If you have any questions that you want to ask Erik privately, that's totally fine. We'll stay on for a few minutes after. And then I have a few more questions, I think from our youth who could not make it, but I want to make sure that everyone who's here today gets their question answered. So if anybody has any other.
Hey, Glenn, I'm just curious, like, I don't know if you guys could do like a raise of hands or anything, but like, has everybody here heard of Harvey Milk prior to this?
Yeah, you can either just use your little reaction feature that says raise your hand, or you can turn on your camera and raise your hand. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up and hand raising.
Yeah, because it kind of sparks a thought that, like, because there's times also nowadays, I mean, I'm meeting people that, you know, are my age and talking to people, and how, you know, black and white it could really be. There's you know, either they've 100% heard of Harvey, they know the story, sometimes even greater than I do. So I'm like, how did you know that? That's unbelievable. But then there's times where, you know, people don't have any clue, have never even heard of it. You know, they've never even heard of him. And it's, you know, that's, I think, another thing that the Milk Foundation is trying to accomplish, is not just for like Harvey's legacy is, but just to get, you know, what he stood for and what he did, you know, available to everyone.
Absolutely. And I think to your point as well, like, it wasn't LGBTQ history, as we know, is not typically taught in schools. And so just now we're seeing a resurgence of youth and kids learning about figures in our community like Harvey Milk. And we're starting to see more of a education around our history as LGBTQ people, on general civil rights leaders. So I think that leads into it, and hopefully events like this will help everybody learn more about our amazing elders in our community like Harvey Milk, who we owe so much to. Okay, so I'm going to read some of our questions from folks who could not make it today. So one question is, you answered this, were you able to meet your great uncle in person? If not, how do you feel about not being able to meet him? What's a question you might have asked him if you were able to meet him?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very unfortunate I didn't get to meet him. Whenever people ask like that question of, you know, oh, who's somebody you could meet, dead or alive or whatever, it's, you know, for me, unfortunately, like the top 3. I mean, he's number 1. Bob Marley is actually number 2 for me. I think he had a really great message, and, you know, again, missed the boat on that one. And I think it's like a 5th grade really kind of answer for me, because I grew up playing basketball, but I always say Michael Jordan, but I don't know. I don't it wouldn't meet him or not at this point. But you know, Harvey, to meet him and to kind of feel the energy that he had would have been really something else, especially, you know, being a nephew, you know, of him. I guess if I had a question for him, I would probably ask him, you know, what was the reason he didn't come out earlier? You know, what was his, because he was so passionate about coming out, and he saw the power behind coming out and what it did. I would want to know what the reason was. You know, why was it, you know, my great grandfather? Like, was it a family thing? Was it, you know, just a cultural thing at the time? Like, what about it, you know, held him back? Because he, again, one of his biggest things was, you know, being your authentic self. And I get, you know, being, you know, sometimes people do better when they have more, you know, they're in a comfortable space and things like that. But for such a strong personality and a strong message, and I'm just curious, you know, why he wasn't more direct, you know, from the beginning. I guess that would be kind of my question. I mean, just I never really thought about what I would actually ask him until now, but I think that's probably what I would ask him.
I think that's an amazing question, and I am sorry that we'll never get the answer, but I love thinking about and pondering about those things for our historical figures. So another question that we had was, does anyone who did know Harvey ever say there's a family resemblance?
Yeah, get that a lot for sure.
You look exactly like him.
Yeah, definitely get that a lot. There was actually I'm the oldest of three boys, so I have a middle brother and then a younger brother. The middle brother, at times, I mean, there's pictures where I'm like, it's really crazy. He looks just like him. But yeah, I mean, we definitely have a pretty strong family resemblance on all ends. My father, even my Uncle Stuart, at times there's a big resemblance. But yeah, I've gotten that one a lot. Yeah, it's funny that at the Milk premiere thing we got to go to, there was like a picture of like all of us with Sean Penn, who played him, who actually, I mean, he really resembles Harvey a lot too. I mean, I know makeup does a lot, but even without the makeup, I was walking up the stairs to go to the premiere. I was a little bit early, and he was sitting on the steps, and I was like, "Oh my God, like you look like you're my uncle." Like what the? It was pretty crazy, but yeah, definitely get the resemblance thing a lot.
Awesome. That was something that I noticed straight away when I saw your face for the first time. So I think that that's another just amazing thing about carrying on our family's legacies. And then
I'll share with you guys a kind of funny thing. So me and my two younger brothers, who are also on the same level of thinking, you know, as I am when it comes to Harvey and what he did, the whole thing, and we, you know, the Milk name, we really like to kind of, you know, put out there, and then when people, you know, hear the name Milk, it's an opportunity to tell them about Harvey. You know, that came with a lot of getting made fun of growing up, but luckily we all were a little bit taller and bigger, and got to the point where I was like, yeah, you're not making fun of me anymore. But I'll show you guys real quick. Actually, it's kind of funny. I don't know if you guys can see it, but we actually, hold on. We all have the same Got Milk tattoo. Can you guys see that?
sort of.
Not sure if you guys.
We could sort of see it if you're up a little. There you go.
There you go.
There, now we can see it. Yeah.
So that's usually a funny thing,
That's
because
great.
one of the things that me and my brother, all three of my brothers, all three of us, do, we all lifeguard at Jones Beach, which is on Long Island. So our shirts are off a lot, and people come up and they go, "What is that tattoo about?" You know, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't the greatest decision I've ever made, but it's an opportunity to talk about who I am, to my name. And a lot of times people go, "Oh, any relation to Harvey Milk?" And I go, "Yep." And we talk, and you know, it's a great kind of talking piece. So
That segues actually perfectly into our next question, which is, how do people typically react when you do tell them that you are related to Harvey Milk, and what do you do in situations where people might react negatively?
So most people, I said, are if they know him, they're very moved or passionate about it, and it's hard. I don't really like even being like thanked sometimes. Like even when I'm at a restaurant, I kind of like to clean up my own plate kind of thing. Like I don't really need like recognition and things like that. So they're like, "Oh my God, thank you," and I'm like, I didn't do anything. You know, that's Harvey. I'm just trying to help out now. But like some people are very passionate. I've only had like, I would say 2 times where people were directly negative. And it's an opportunity for me to kind of educate. And then, you know, it gets to a point where I'm not gonna, you know, tolerate it anymore, and I'm gonna kind of leave the conversation because it's not really going anywhere. I've also had times where, you know, people kind of make a joke about it a little bit, or that they'll say something, and again, it's an opportunity for me to educate and just kind of let them know that's not cool. You know, that's not cool. How would you like to do that? You know, if it's something that you cared about, you know, if one of your family members, you know, like I'm an easygoing guy. I have a lot of jobs where I'm interacting with the public. I bartend, I lifeguard, I do sales. The sales thing is a funny thing too, because like it gives me an opportunity to sell them on what Harvey did. So I kind of wish somebody would challenge what he did a little bit more. It's kind of fun for me. But yeah, only about 2 times where it was like very, very negative, names and slurs and stuff like that. And just what are you gonna do? I'm not gonna physically fight somebody at this point, unless they wanted to. But I'm not gonna get into that.
Awesome. And I love that you use that as an educational moment, as we call that teaching moments at GLYS, where folks may not necessarily be super receptive to the LGBTQ community at first, or to allied folks like yourself. And it's just a great opportunity to start that conversation and help that person on their journey, because I like to say that folks who are not members of the LGBTQ community are just all allies in waiting. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then we had a couple of comments in the chat box that I just want to acknowledge, that everyone kind of in the millennial Gen Z realm has heard of Harvey Milk a lot because of Sean Penn and because of that Sean Penn movie, Milk. But queer history has often been systemically erased. So it becomes very difficult for people who don't identify as the LGBTQ community or aren't active allies to learn about that. So I think, what were some ways, I know you talked about your family showing you the life and times of Harvey Milk, but what were some maybe other materials or ways that you learned about not just your uncle, but other figures in the LGBTQ community?
Well, so I mean, being the nephew of Harvey, I mean, I was around kind of everything. One of the things where I guess I was kind of out of my comfort zone for a little bit was there was a benefit in Palm Springs, California, and there was a I guess it was like a drag kind of show thing. Like, I don't exactly know what the name of it would be, but it was like a big deal. It was like there's a whole court system, and I didn't know about any of this. There's unbelievable like work that goes into it, and talent that's out there, and it was the first time I had ever been to like a drag show kind of thing, where it was a lot of there was transgender people, there was anything that you could possibly think of, and that was like, again, going back to like an energy level, that was something completely different for any experience of any kind of Life and Times of Harvey Milk, any kind of like watching any kind of documentary. So I guess witnessing things firsthand and meeting people and talking to people in that community, is how you kind of educate yourself, if that makes any sense, if I'm answering the question correctly. Yeah, it's funny. So my wife's sister, she identifies as queer, and she's here and she's staying with us. And, I've known her now for 15, 16 years. And I mean, she's staying in this house with us, and I named one of my children after her. You know what I mean? So it's like, when people see that, and I tell people, and she comes out in public and they go, oh, what's her deal? I said, she identifies as queer, and they're like, well, what is that? It gives you an opportunity again to educate, and she's awesome. I mean, she won't tolerate people that are coming from a bad energy about it, but she'll be happy to educate and talk to people, and I definitely respect her a lot, and she's definitely somebody in my life that I admire.
Amazing. That's so cool to know that you have someone that you're close to who identifies that way, and you have that opportunity to build those relationships. And then we had another comment, as someone who lived during that time but had to remain silent, coming out is not easy, and coming out has never been an easy thing to do. Live the message that you were trying to do, which I think is harkening back to what you were saying, Erik, is to be your authentic self. And I just want to acknowledge all of the folks here who are of a generation where it was a lot more difficult to come out and to be openly LGBTQ, gay, lesbian, trans, and just thank them and acknowledge that without y'all and without the generation of folks who saw Harvey Milk when he was alive, we would not be able to do the work that we do today at places like the Harvey Milk Foundation, at places like GLYS. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. I think we're hitting right about our time together. So if anybody has any last final questions while we are still on, and then Erik and I will stay on for a few minutes after, if anybody wants to chat, and I will go ahead and stop the recording.
If I could just say real quick, I definitely appreciate the opportunity from GLYS, and thank everybody that works there. I mean, I feel your passion. I feel exactly what you guys are trying to do every day. And it's very admirable. Galena put a ton of work into this, and she's awesome. And if you don't mind me sharing, like, I spoke to you briefly before this started, but like, your journey and what you're trying to do, stay on it. It's awesome. Even like from when I first met the board and Robert and everyone across the board, and I matched to you guys for a reason, and it wasn't for the first reason exactly. And this is kind of the beginning of my journey moving forward also. So I think you guys are doing a great thing, and I hope to partner with you guys in the future. I hope you guys could help me kind of grow, and if you guys ever have any kind of like feedback on this is really kind of my first kind of talking experience where I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. But please let me know, and I definitely want to work with you guys and get the Milk Foundation more involved, and just kind of keep the ball rolling. So thank you guys, and thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we look forward to having any kind of partnership you're open to in the future. And I just want to thank all of our guests for coming out and let you know that the recording will go live on our YouTube and Facebook. And you are free to, as I said, reach out to, I popped Erik's email in the chat if you'd like to reach out to him, or if you want additional contact information or more information about possible upcoming collaborations with Erik and the Milk Foundation, you can contact me. I'm popping my email in the chat right now, or if you have any questions or any feedback about today, we would absolutely love to hear it.